Welcome to Madoka Theory Friday. This is Cabbit Purrball reporting for duty. In the Puella Magi Madoka concept movie, which unveiled during the Studio Shaft's 40th anniversary event in 2015. In the concept movie, there was a significant emphasis placed on Mami Tomoe, suggesting an expanded role for her in the then up-and-coming project. Shaft's representative director highlighted that this new project aimed to strengthen the image of Mami as a god of battle, drawing parallels between her and Guan Yu, the revered general from the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. In the concept movie, there's a striking scene where Mami stands amidst flame, adopting a pose reminiscent of Madoka Kaname's transformation in episode 12 of the original series, where Madoka ascends to a godlike status. This visual parallel hints at Mami potentially undergoing a similar transcendence, possibly assuming a divine role akin to Madoka's. Given these elements, it's plausible to theorize that the creators initially envisioned Mami taking on a pivotal role in maintaining cosmic balance, especially after Homura's actions disrupted the law of cycles. Mami could have been conceptualized as a guardian or enforcer, ensuring the continued function of the law of cycles in Madoka's altered absence. However, with the announcement of the fourth movie, Puella Magi Madoka Magica, Walpurgis Notch Rising, the narrative focus appears to have shifted toward the enigmatic entity Walpurgis Notch. This change suggests that the original plans for Mami's expanded role might have been altered or postponed in favor of exploring other plot lines. These initial ideas highlight the creative depth and potential character developments considered for Mami in the Madoka universe. And when you think about it, there's another layer to this, one rooted in the very first timeline. In that original timeline, before Homura ever made her wish, it was just Mami and Madoka, a mentor and a girl who admired her deeply. And some fans, myself included, have wondered if maybe that first timeline was originally setting up Mami and Madoka as a kind of romantic pair. Not explicitly, of course, but the bond they shared was deep, sincere, and emotionally charged in a way that felt foundational. Think about episode 3, when Madoka earnestly tells Mami she wants to fight by her side. Mami breaks down, crying. That wasn't just admiration. That was a girl who had been alone for so long, finally feeling seen, finally feeling chosen. And in other stories, like Different Story manga, Madoka holds Mami in her arms and tells her she wants to share her burden, to take it away from her. It's raw and it's intimate. That kind of closeness can't be overlooked. There's even that quiet moment in episode 4 where after Mami dies, Madoka leaves her magical girl design notebook in Mami's apartment. A notebook filled with hopes, dreams, and magical girl sketches, all inspired by what she learned from Mami. It's like her way of saying, I'm not ready without you. And then in episode 12, when Madoka becomes a goddess, Mami symbolically gives that book back. That's huge! It's like Madoka is ready now, ready to become something greater. And Mami is there, passing the torch in the most poetic way possible. So when we talk about this god of battle theory for Mami, it doesn't just make sense narratively, it makes sense thematically. Because maybe this time, it's Madoka giving something back to Mami, a kind of mutual transcendence, born out of love, trust, and the bond they shared from the very beginning. And hey, maybe that first timeline was meant to hint a romance. What would that relationship have looked like if it were explored? Would Mami and Madoka have been a good couple? Do you feel like that connection between them was always there? Could their shared purpose have blossomed into something more? And would you like to see me make a video exploring more about this aspect of them? And would you have wanted to see the creators explore more of this idea of Mami being a god of battle or some type of god of war? Do you think it would have been interesting if this had been the focus of the fourth Madoka movie rather than it being focused on, well, Purgasnotch? And do you think that should Madoka Magica continue beyond the fourth movie, that we will one day be able to see this reimagined idea of Mami being some sort of god similar to Madoka? What sort of story do you think they could tell if they actually focused on this idea? Even more evidence that these two might have been meant to be a couple in the first timeline comes from a lesser known moment in Madoka Magica Portable, the visual novel game that expanded on many of the show's timelines. In one version of events, Mami dies protecting Madoka from wild Purgasnotch, a small, easily overlooked moment, but one that quietly reshaped how fans viewed their relationship. That single act, a sacrifice made out of love, trust, or perhaps something even deeper, has become a cornerstone for those who believe Mami and Madoka shared more than just camaraderie. In that early timeline, it's a moment that inspired this very video you're watching now, because the more I looked into their story, more I felt like there was something real there, something unspoken, but profoundly felt. And once you start seeing it, it becomes impossible to unsee it. So let's talk about that. I've already mentioned that in episode 10, during the first timeline, Mami and Madoka work together as magical girl pair and rescue Homura from a witch's barrier. In that version of events, there's a clear closeness between the two that predates Homura's entry into their lives. Some fans interpret this as evidence that Mami and Madoka were more than just teammates. They were emotionally and perhaps even romantically bonded. There's a kind of warmth and familiarity between them that feels too intimate to be purely circumstantial. Mami, often portrayed as lonely in most timelines, actually seems fulfilled when paired with Madoka, complete in a way that she rarely gets to be. In Madoka Magica Portable, this implication is deepened further. I've already mentioned that in one of the alternate routes, Mami dies protecting Madoka from wild Purgasnotch's attack. This single moment echoes the kind of love that's willing to sacrifice everything. Whether you read it as platonic, maternal, or romantic, there's no denying that this is a love that defines Mami. Love for Madoka that overrides self-preservation. Love that is noble but tragic. But the real emotional complexity of their bond begins to unravel in Mami's route of the game. In this story, Mami rescues Madoka from Gertrude and introduces her to the magical girl life. Inspired by Mami's strength and kindness, Madoka chooses to become a magical girl herself later. Madoka returns the favor by saving Mami from the clutches of Charlotte, a moment that seems to poetically mirror their earlier rescue of Homura in the anime. It's clinical, like much of the series, but instead of looping through trauma, it loops through care, acts of love, passing back and forth between them like a whispered promise. And yet, even within the tenderness, jealousy begins to bloom. As Homura starts to grow closer to Madoka, Mami begins to feel it, the sting of being left behind. It isn't overt at first, but it creeps in. The scene where Madoka visits Mami's classroom and gives her a pound cake, a simple, sweet gift to thank her for the tea party, is one of the most telling. The moment feels warm until Madoka mentions that Homura helped make the cake.
あら、Kanameさんどうしたの？ここ3年の教室よ。マミさんを探していたんです。私を？はい。これどうぞ。お菓子？ありがとう。これってパウンドケーキ？はい。ちょっと崩れちゃったけど、調理実習で作ったんです。まあ、そうだったのね。まだ温かい。マミさんにはお茶とかいただいてるんで、お礼というか、なんというか。そんな、お礼とか本当に良かったのに。でも、せっかくだからいただくね。 マミさんほど上手に作れなかったけど、同じ班だったホムラちゃんと一緒に頑張ったんです。明美さんも？はい。そう、ありがとう。じゃあ私、そろそろ失礼します。要さんが一人で作ったものじゃなかったのか。明美さん、どうして彼女が関わると素直な気持ちで受け取れないの？私、どうしたのかな。笑顔、きちんと作れてるかな。わざわざ来てくれてありがとう。早速これからいただくね。嬉しい。それじゃあまた後で。あ、明美さんにもお礼を言っておいてくれる？はい、わかりました。嬉しいはずなのに、本当に何なのかしら、このモヤモヤしたものは。私。
The music stops, the atmosphere darkens, Mommy's smile falters, and just like that, the sweetness curdles into something sour. Her loneliness, always lingering beneath the surface, is suddenly awakened by the presence of another girl in Madoka's life. It's here that Mommy's jealousy isn't cartoonish or possessive. It's melancholic. She doesn't lash out. She simply folds inward. The depression that settles over her is quiet, but heavy. You can feel it drag the scene down like a wet cloth. It's not just that Madoka is spending more time with Homura. It's that Mami, who once had Madoka's affection, who once stood as her protector and her partner, now feels like a relic of a fading timeline. The pain of being forgotten, of being replaced, begins to gnaw at her. She doesn't know how to voice it. And that's the heartbreak of Mommy's character. She wants connection so desperately, but fears she's never enough to hold on to it. Her tea parties are elegant and beautiful, but they're also rituals of loneliness, desperate attempts to create meaning, to foster closeness in a world where magical girls are fated to suffer alone. Madoka, in Mommy's eyes, was the one person who could see past the mask of maturity and into the vulnerable girl beneath. To lose her, or to feel like she's being lost, is more than just sad, it's devastating. If you read their dynamic through a romantic lens, it makes all this even more tragic. Because then, the cake isn't just a gift, it's a love offering. A soft, home-baked way of saying, I care about you. And then, that offering is tainted by the mention of Homura. Mami doesn't just feel left out, she feels heartbroken. Some fans even speculate that in the early timeline where Mami and Madoka worked together, they may have been in love. It's a beautiful idea that before the timeline was rewritten again and again, there was a version of the story where Mami wasn't alone, where her love wasn't unrequited, where she died, not just for the cause, but for someone cherished beyond words. And perhaps that's why she's so emotionally reactive in other timelines. Perhaps deep in her soul, even if she can't remember it, there's a trace of what she once had with Madoka. A lost timeline's ghost. Even Homura's perception of Mami is shaped by this. Homura is rarely hostile toward Mami unless she senses a threat, and the way she often deals with Mami, whether coldly or with resentment, might be linked to her own awareness, subconscious or otherwise, that Mami and Madoka once had something precious. Something Homura herself never got to experience fully. Mami's quiet confidence, her gentle presence, may have been the one space where Madoka felt protected before everything fell apart. And so, their story becomes the tragic intersection of memory, lost and unspoken affection. A story of what could have been and what might still linger beneath the surface. A smile at a tea party, a cake shared between three, moment where the music stops, and in that silence, everything they never said is screaming. What would that relationship have looked like if it were explored? Would Mami and Madoka have been a good couple? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts. And stay tuned for next week's Madoka Magica Theory on Madoka Theory Friday. Speaking of timelines, I know I did talk a bit about the very first timeline that takes place within Madoka Magica and the relationship that Madoka and Mami had within it. However, there is another timeline that is much darker where Homura actually betrays Madoka in order to side with a villain known as Elena Gray. If you want to know about that timeline, see how Homura betrays everyone, check this video out and you'll be able to learn the story of how Homura betrays everyone for the sake of Madoka, and I'll see you there.